So what?
Yeah.
it does. It doesn't matter. I mean,
No.
we're definitely having to move to a more connected, conscious, co-creative, collaborative environment. Too much of that me, go away. I'm hoarding. It's such a big issue we've got, and the fact that we have more billionaires than we've ever had is a huge issue. Like, it's a huge problem, and it's the height of that me-ness, and hold on and hoard and not give anything to anyone. And we keep hearing this stuff about these billionaires that are giving $2 an hour to their staff, and they've got so much money, it's ridiculous. And this has to change. That whole mindset has to change. That's not okay, right? And it's okay if someone's successful and someone makes money, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with making money. What's wrong is when we're not co-creating, collaborating, we're not sharing, we're not supporting.
Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems, and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey toward freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to Uncovered. I'm super excited today. I have a man here that actually helped grow me out of my little room that I had that's actually just behind me. It was just here, but I knocked the wall down. He started me on a journey of exposure that I never knew existed. I was a healer, just sitting in my room. My wife went to a weekend course. This guy was in it. And I jumped on this bandwagon of that is Marcus. And I'm really excited to have you on Uncovered, Marcus, to get a little bit, for the listeners to get your magic today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really cool to be here. And it was a magical journey that we went on, and I'm so blessed that you came to that event and that you decided to jump on board, and we've sort of been friends ever since, and I think that's one of the things I love about creating these sort of communities is not that you get clients and you make money and all that stuff, but actually that you make these beautiful connections with amazing human beings, and you're definitely one of those amazing human beings. I'm really blessed to be here and have you as a friend.
Yeah, and it's awesome. It's nice to have these experiences. I remember jumping on your program, and I was one of those people. Everyone goes to me like honey to a bee. I had a lot of people asking me, "Hey Jason, hey Jason, hey Jason." I was like, "I'm here to learn. Just leave me alone. I just want to learn some stuff." I had no idea what I was doing. I was out of my depth, and you helped me actually get a book out. That was my first thing that we did. And I was like, oh my God, I've come to this thing. I have no idea what I'm doing. And now I'm writing a book. And I just did as I was told.
You did.
I often do. Very good. And it took me a little while to get it out there. But thank you, Marcus, for jumping on. I'd love to get a little bit of a background story, a little bit of backstory about who is Marcus, where's he come from, and what is he about?
Yeah, there's a loaded question, isn't it? Well, look, I came, like the short version of it is I came from a sort of corporate background, and I was a corporate Jedi for all the wrong reasons. And I was successful at it. So there was no issues there. And, I had a beautiful job with a national company traveling the country in a corner office, and I had the right, European sports car in the drive, the garage, and I had the right house in the right suburb with the right wife and the right friends, and everything would, from the outside was perfect. I mean, it couldn't have been more perfect, but it wasn't. And the reason it wasn't is because I was doing it for someone else, not myself, which was obviously my parents. And so that really, there was one pivotal moment, one pivotal day where I was sitting at my office and I was very sort of egotistical about my life and how wonderful it was. And wasn't I a clever person and how good was I? And one of those moments that we have. And I remember putting my hand on my heart and I said, there's got to be something more than this. Like, this can't be it, surely. I'm theoretically at the top of the tree-ish, right? Or I've got to where I thought I was going to get. And anyway, 2 weeks later, I gave myself chronic fatigue syndrome and spent the next 2 and a bit years at home, in bed, pretty much, trying to get well. And I think that really launched me into the sort of natural therapy world, the sort of alternative medicine, but really the spiritual path is probably the key. And up until that moment, I'd always had an interesting journey with energy and the universe, but I never put words to it. I was always into, doing seances and talking to people on the other side. And I always had these sort of connections, but never really thought anything of it. When you're younger, you sort of do these things and it's like, well, it's nothing special. It's just what you do, knowing that all your friends around you aren't doing that. But I think I was dragged away from that because of school and because of the place where I grew up and my community at the time, and didn't revisit it again until it was forced on me when I had chronic fatigue. Up until that moment, I thought McDonald's 3 times a week was good for you, which pretty much sums up where my head was at.
Yeah.
And I got a rude awakening that obviously wasn't the best thing, and that I really needed to follow, a spiritual path. And again, I had a few sort of almost goes at it. And I remember, but just before, not long before I got chronic fatigue, I had sort of broken up with my wife or partner at the time because of sort of spiritual indifferences. When I look back now, I knew there was some path coming at some level, and I knew that I couldn't follow the path with that person. And so it was kind of interesting. But yeah, it's been an amazing 2 years finding out about me, the universe, everything. And that led to some pretty cool experiences. One of which where I created my own methodology. Once I graduated as a kinesiologist and counselor and coach, I created my own methodology called dimensional therapy through some pretty interesting experiences. And I don't know how far you want me to dive down that rabbit hole, but hey, I'm happy to go there.
Marcus, I think this is really, really important because you've gone into so many things. You've been at the top of the tree in corporate. You've gone into gone into a corporate way of sharing magic and what you do.
Yes.
And you've gone around in a little bit of a circle. And I think it's really, really important, listeners, to understand that a lot of people who are really, really amazing at what they do quite often hide what they are from the world. And I'd love a little bit of a spin on this, because a lot of people look at, when I joined your program, there wasn't much of that side of you, was there? Because you put yourself in a position to say, I have to do this now. I have to do this business. And you couldn't, you weren't allowed, it was like you weren't allowed to blend. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, as you speak about this now, because when I had the chronic fatigue and I went then into healing, became a healer or whatever we want to call it, and I really went into my stuff at that point and created dimensional therapy, and I had a clinic and was seeing clients and was really, really successful. And then a whole lot of things sort of happened. My ego again got a little bit out of control. So I started I sort of hibernated the healing, the teaching part of it. And that then drew me back into a corporate-y stance, but not in corporate, but in wellness. And lots of people started asking me, how are you so successful and attracting clients and making money? And so I just started teaching a few practitioners how to do what I did, and that sort of went from one thing to the other. Then I created, as you know, Wellness Leadership Academy, and I got really sucked into that space. And I got drawn sort of back into, so halfway between the corporate world and the real me, I sort of got caught. And I started to create this, persona of me that allowed me to hide yet again. And I think my experience anyway is the fullness of who we are can be the most scariest thing to do. To actually stand up and go, this is me, whether you like it or not, this is just my magic and the thing I have to do, is a really scary thing to do. But I think it's absolutely what's needed right now, and it's the most important thing to do, is to fully step into that. And the COVID experience, I suppose, gave me like a starter back into that realm, and really anchored me back into that, where I just can't do anything but that. And it was great to have some help along the way. And guys, when I was sitting there, I was in between worlds, and I don't know whether anyone else has experienced this, where you're sort of in the world that you're doing, and this was all happening in corporate as well, but I got more of I got thrown into the middle of this, so I wasn't consciously aware of the journey at the time. Yeah. Now, this time around, I was really consciously aware of it, and so I'm stuck between worlds. This world of who I really am and what I'm really here to share, and the other world where I had a really successful business, multi-million-dollar wellness business, global business, traveling the world, blah, blah, blah. Caught between worlds, and I got stuck for a while. I got stuck for about, I don't know, a good year or 18 months until I sort of felt in myself and went, I've just got to step into place, but I can't feel I can do it myself. So I felt into, where do I go? And that's when I reached out to you, mate, and we had some great chats.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have had this thing so often with people who at sort of like their last legs, and then somehow someone like the bat phone calls me, and it was really interesting to connect in with you, Marcus, because I'd never seen you in the place. You if you guys watch this as a video, this is true Marcus, but when I got to see Marcus, he was in a place that was very, very scary for himself. There was suicidal totally. Thoughts. There was all sorts of stuff going on. And quite often as leaders, we don't know how to communicate that, because we put ourselves in a wedge that says, I have to be this for the world. And I remember you saying to me, Marcus, I can't let it, no one's allowed to know this. No one's allowed to know that I'm at my wit's end again, like you were in that 2.5 years.
Yeah, totally. Because you have this perceived leadership role or something, and you can't be vulnerable in that. You've just got to be what people need you to be or want you to be. And I think when you get caught between worlds, it's a really dark place. It can be a dark place, and it can lead to all sorts of conversations in your head. And I think that the reason it does that is because you know what you're meant to be doing, and it feels like you can't do it because there's all this energy behind you of all these people and expectations and things that you used to be. And what if I now show up as this, which might seem way different to what I used to be? How are people going to perceive me? Is everyone going to run away and just go, oh, he's now a weirdo, strange, I don't want to talk to him, or won't they? And so you get into these dark places where you think, you can't go forward, you can't go back, right? So it's like, well, I'm out of here. Like, if I can't go forward and now I can't go back, I'm screwed. What am I going to do now?
That's it. And listeners, this is where you're when you get to a position where you realize where you are. And you and I have had such similar tracks in life. Yeah. You get into a position where you look back and there's a cliff, you look forward and it feels like there's a cliff too, because you don't know where to stand. And all you are is you're standing right on the edge of two cliffs and you're like, you're going to fall. And this is where we all need help. As leaders, the biggest mistake is thinking that we are invincible and that we don't need help. We need it in different ways, in different times, in different contexts.
Totally. And right now, more than ever, we need to sort of collaborate, support, connect together and help each other through whatever, state of energy we're going through at the moment. And there's lots of transition right now, and there's lots of being called into the thing you're meant to be doing. And it's almost like these cliffs are being formed around us. Whereas before we could probably avoid it or sneak around it, or it looked like a little dip rather than a big sort of hole. But now the world needs us to step powerfully into this.
And I agree. So I'd love to let's take a little backtrack down memory lane, because I remember when I listened to you around your story when you were having those dark times. It really hit me in the feels. I was just like, he found something. He found something inside that and saw something. So I'm just going to let you talk about what you experienced when you were going through and you broke through something when you were in your dark days with your chronic fatigue. Let us know what happened.
Oh yeah. So yeah, what initially was really dark days, and then it became really incredible light days. Because within any of these things, they generally are taking you to some amazingness. I find when you let go and sort of get into the flow of it, things happen. But for me, it was dark for a while because my dream, what I thought was my dream, had just been shattered into a million pieces. And so that was really tough to sort of try and work out, how do I put pieces together. But in that case, I got some assistance. Like in this case, I got you to help me in that time, because we didn't know each other then. So, unfortunately, no, I had some really interesting support, and it happened through a meditation that I was doing. So one of the things I did to help heal myself was just meditate. And at the time, I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't watch TV, couldn't listen to the radio, couldn't talk to anyone on the phone, couldn't go outside. Any amount of stimulus just wiped me out, like totally wiped me out. So at the time, I thought to myself, well, what can I do, right? There's always something you can do. And in this case, well, I'm lying in bed or lying on the couch, I'll meditate. So I just meditated for hours and hours every day. And my sort of meditation I'd been taught years earlier was to go down some steps into a cellar and just imagine yourself sitting in a cellar, and there's a movie screen and you can imagine yourself being well or whatever it might be. And one day this cellar turned into a pyramid, and I started meditating in the pyramid. And at the time, I sort of thought, well, that's a bit weird and strange. And, I don't know anything about pyramids except they're in Egypt. And what we were taught at school, they're burial chambers for pharaohs. That's all I knew.
Biggest lie too.
Exactly. Yeah, one of the many. And so I just started meditating in this pyramid. And not long after I started doing that, I had another experience, which was I had a being walk through the wall of the pyramid and sit opposite me and start talking to me. And I'm like, well, this is strange and weird, but I'm sick. So it's just my imagination. But the interesting part about, because people often ask me this, the interesting part is that the voice I heard wasn't my voice. Sometimes when you hear voices or things talk to you, it comes through your voice. It was not my voice. And anyway, this being said, I'm coming back in 2 weeks with another being. We're going to give you a whole lot of information. You have to take it, that we want you to take to the planet. And at the time, I thought nothing much of it. I just thought I was loopy. 2 weeks to the day, came back, 2 beings walked through the pyramid, and we started a conversation, and they started to give me information. And for a little while there, I argued with them and said, well, I'm not doing this. This is ridiculous. But anyway, they weren't going away. So I just did what I was told, basically, and started jotting down information, healing, and just a whole lot of amazing stuff about quantum and mass and planets and Earth and humans and all of this sort of stuff. And I started to, I suppose, get the healing that they were giving me, the information they were giving me, and that really propelled my health to, amazingly. And I, again, when it first started, and I'm jotting down information, just being a good boy, just doing what I'm told, I still didn't think much of it. I still thought, well, maybe I'm just tuning into the universe and just, I don't know, getting it from that's already on the planet. I'm just tapping into it. And I remember taking a book to my school at the time, and I was just sort of halfway through, I just started kinesiology at the time. And I took a folder with an image on the front cover of the folder to school, and the owner of the college had found out that I bought this book, and she said, you've got something you need to show me. And I showed her the front cover, the picture, and she looked at it and started crying. And this beautiful lady was a bit like Mrs. McGonagall from Harry Potter, a little bit scary, beautiful white hair, like long hair, very mystical, beautiful lady, but a little bit scary. And she started crying, and I thought, oh my God, what have I done? Anyway, we sat down, and she said to me 5 years earlier, she'd had some channeling as well. And they said to her, in 5 years, a gentleman will approach you with this image on the front of a cover of a book. And I went, holy moly. So at that moment, I went, okay, maybe there's something going on here. Still up to that moment, and we're probably, 6 months or more in, I still didn't really believe it. I still thought I was just kidding. Anyway, So after that, I took it really seriously and I started jotting all the information down. And eventually I created a 3-year diploma course called Dimensional Therapy. And yeah, we ran that for 5 or 6 years. And then again, which seems to be a bit my cycle, my ego got involved. It was also a bit early for the planet at the time. We were talking about some really out there stuff and had some incredible, crazy experiences. And so based on all that, I hibernated it. And the ego thing got away because I started to become a little bit like a guru. I started to get followers, and that's not what it was about. And I didn't want that. I didn't feel I deserved to be a guru for a start, or didn't feel it was true to the stuff that was coming through. So I hibernated it for a while. And this is where I went into the other stuff, back into sort of almost that corporate world, helping wellness professionals to, grow their business. And thankfully I did that because we got to meet.
Yeah.
So it was well worth it, even just for that, right?
Yeah. Look, I think the thing, listeners, that you want to hear here is a person, and I'm the same. Marcus and I are very, very similar in the way that we think. And I remember people doing the same with me, putting me in the guru space, and I hated it. I just felt, and people quite often they still do it in the academy. They put me up on a pedestal and go, okay, you are it, because I'm so accurate and able to see and understand stuff that they can't.
Yeah.
And we do ourselves a disservice sometimes when you've got the ability that you and I have to be able to perceive and understand something a little bit beyond life and human nature.
Yeah.
You get put in that place, and then people do one thing: they get lazy.
Yeah.
And they go, okay, I'll just wait for Marcus. I'll just wait for Jason. They'll tell me some cool stuff, and I just get to lick a lollipop and watch. And I don't like that for that reason, because everyone is waiting for us to share what needs to happen next.
Yeah.
And it's awful, guys. And look, you probably would have seen this, Marcus, in your journey as well. People who love being put on the pedestal and keeping themselves there.
Totally.
And it's such a massive ego trip, isn't it? And you do have to be mindful of it, don't you?
You do. It's really easy to get caught in it, sucked into it. The ego is super sneaky. And even now that I've brought it back, and I sort of not had to, but that I was compelled to, and obviously you assisted that process. One of the things that stopped me bringing it back for years, I think, is that fear of, well, what if my ego gets carried away again? What if I get sucked into it? But this time around, I know it's really different, and I'm really mindful of it and watching it, and I know I've got good support now, because I know the first thing, if I ever felt it, I come straight to you and go, hey, dude, this what's going on here, and there's help.
Yeah, 100%. And it's really important because, look, I'm going to give listeners a little bit of a tip. Both Marcus and I have some very similar. We love sacred geometry.
Yes, we do.
So we're really connected to it. We both have a completely different spin on how to use it, right? Which is uniqueness. That's what sacred geometry is. It's very, very loose in what we do, in what it is. So you have different ways of using it. The thing that's really important is making sure that we can use it in the way that's actually going to be so supportive of the people around us, and make sure that we do the right thing with our ego, because our ego is going to put us in a suplex sometimes. And quite often I've seen this with lots of people over the years. I went to a really big book publishing company and was a helper for a while. I did it for a couple of years, and I got to see a whole lot of big players. And what I saw was head up the arse. And I walked away really disappointed, because I was like, okay, what happened here? Yeah. And sometimes it's listening too much to great feedback. Yeah, absolutely. And we have to be really mindful, because we're looking at something that can be, it's hard to language sometimes. You can change the language and make it fit corporate. You can make it fit wherever you want to. Yeah. It's just knowing how to make sure that it's languaged in a really, really healthy way, so people can understand it. Totally. I agree. And just being true to that, staying true to that natural flow, that natural thread of you and the universe, and there's a great alignment between those two. And some sort of checkpoints as you're going along the way to just
make sure you're following the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is really different, listeners, is that most people don't do this. Like, it sounds woo-woo, but really, let's just strip it back for a minute. You walk into a room and it's full of yuck. Everyone feels that yuck, right? Everybody does.
Everyone.
Right? So there's not one person that is listening right now who doesn't go into a room and go, this feels a bit wonky or weird. And that's actually what sensitive people do, is they feel the energy first, they get the emotion, and then they get the insight, the mental. And this is the really amazing people. And what I want to explain here is guru. Now, guru, both Marcus and I have very similar things that we do. You've connected with the Kabbalah. I've studied the Kabbalah.
Yeah.
Now, guru represents a particular Sephiro in the Kabbalah, and it's the joyful one. It's the expression of light.
Yes.
And it's called Chesed. And so what it is about being your best, authentic, integral self. That's what guru represents. And it's the planet Jupiter. It's the most expansive planet that gives us the joy, the creativity, and the opportunities to be the best we can be.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, it is kind of fascinating how guru has been spun to a whole different egotistical sort of framework. And it's none of that.
No. And it's never was designed for that. So when we understand true guru, it's about what we're trying to explain here is being the best person you can be.
Yeah.
Walking it.
Yeah.
And that's as simple as what it is. So you can play in the spiritual space as much as you like, but if you're a dick, then there's what point?
Right? What point?
There's no point in all the spiritual stuff at all. If you can't land being a nice guy, and this is what I love about you, Marcus, because you actually represent, in my opinion, when I met you, I got to meet, there are people that I meet who have a certain archetypal way of living this life. Yeah. And it's a Jesus archetype. It's a walking to make sure that you're doing the right thing when you're walking.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is really, really important, listeners, to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to feel into that and follow that, it's that, well, for me, it's following the energy, following that path, that energy, and doing the natural right thing. It's different to doing the right thing, because that sometimes, feels like you have to do something to do the right thing. It's not a have to do anything. It's actually just a natural state of being. If we were if everyone was connected into the natural flow, the natural state of the universe, then we wouldn't need rules and police and jails, and we wouldn't need any of that.
No, that's exactly right. And there would not be competition.
No.
I found this really, really interesting when I started working with people. My boss at the time, he pointed out all the therapists around where I was working. He said, here are all your competition, Jason. I started sending them to them.
Yeah.
I was like, here's my allies.
Yeah.
And I look at you, Marcus, as an ally. I never look. I don't understand competition. It doesn't make any sense. And in flow, there's no such thing. It's like we do things that are really, really similar. At the same, we do really different, and we're here to help serve. And that's what we're here for. And I don't understand this whole thing about you're going to take my client, you're going to take this, you're going to.
No,
what do you think about this, Marcus?
I've never understood that.
In this way.
Never understood that. One of the things I used to teach people is because, when I worked in a clinic, someone else's clinic, I used to go and network with all the practitioners in there, and I used to send them business. Yeah. And I realized soon that I'm not the guru of everything. I'm not the be all and end all for a client, right? I've got some cool things I could do and I can help. And some of them do completely heal someone and fix someone. But at the end of the day, we need a team around us, not an individual. And so I used to work out that, well, if I'm doing this type of energy medicine, then I probably need a naturopath for the physical stuff. And I probably need a this and a that. And so I just started networking with all the people and just started sending all my clients to them.
Yeah.
And I still can't believe how many people I would speak to, Jace, that was in that mindset.
Yeah.
What do you mean you're going to send me clients? It's like, it was almost like scary for them to receive clients, because it's like, well, I don't want to give you clients. Like the clients will come to you and they'll think you're way better than me, and they'll never come back. And it's like, that's not how it works.
No, it isn't. And it's so annoying because look, I posted on a group just recently. It was just to ask about what sort of meditations would be suitable for this group.
Yeah.
The admin yanked it and said, I'm actually looking for clients. And I was just like, you fucking kidding me? I am just asking the question to get some input so I can actually build a whole bunch of meditations that will be useful for the industry.
That's it.
And he thinks I'm pilfering clients. I was so pissed off. And I just sit there and just go, what is all this about? And what if I did? What if someone said, hey, I want to work with you? So what?
So what? So what?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I mean,
No.
we're definitely having to move to a more connected, conscious, co-creative, collaborative environment. Too much of that me, go away. I'm hoarding. It's such a big issue we've got. And the fact that we have more billionaires than we've ever had is a huge issue. Like, it's a huge problem. And it's the height of that me-ness, and hold on and hoard and not give anything to anyone. And we keep hearing this stuff about these billionaires that are giving $2 an hour to their staff, and they've got so much money, it's ridiculous. And this has to change. That whole mindset has to change. That's not okay, right? And it's okay if someone's successful and someone makes money, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with making money. What's wrong is when we're not co-creating, collaborating, we're not sharing, we're not supporting, right? And it doesn't mean those people are then going to be lazy if you gave them money or distributed it more evenly or better. It just means that you're caring for their soul, to give someone, rather than $2 an hour, $4 an hour, right? And even that's, anyway, it's just a number. But distributing it, because everyone's got gifts. Some people's gifts are becoming billionaires and have that gift of being able to do that. Other people have gifts of healing, and other people have gifts of joy and happiness and sharing and all of this sort of stuff. And if the only focus is money and then everything goes there, then all of these other people with gifts that could be shared out don't get an opportunity to do that, because they get stuck in survival and fighting and panicking and trying to fit into this world. And that's just so backward for a civilization. Like, it's so backward.
And I think this is something that we all need to think about, is that so success is so money driven subconsciously, right? So people go, okay, if you're successful, you must have this amount of money, you have to have this house. And look, I remember going to some third world countries. I've been to quite a few. I've been to Peru and been to Sri Lanka, and going to the third world countries, I've seen more happiness there on faces than I've seen in first world countries, who are fighting for the house, wanting to get that thing, and wanting to look at having that right car.
Absolutely. And I've so lived that journey, and there's no freedom in it.
No.
And the fact that these people that you've seen who don't have a lot of money are freer, which allows them to be happier, which allows them to express more of who they are. When you're busy trying to fit in, right? And that's fit in as in trying to pay a mortgage and trying to fit into a society that demands you have a mortgage and you have a car finance and you have this and you have that. And you don't have much time and space to be fully you.
No, and that's correct. And I think there's that side, and then we have the other flip side where people remove themselves completely away and pretend that they're happy when they're not. Right? So we have this polarity, don't we?
We do.
It's like the Byron Bay archetype of healers. When I was in Canberra, I had all the people who wanted to do healing. I'm going to move up north. It's going to be better up there. And everyone's cutting each other's fingers off a session up there, and not actually valuing money. And there's a lot of ego up there. Yeah, that's right. So there's a big challenge to know how to get this corporate, this thing stuff, get the spiritual stuff, and actually mesh them together and make them work.
Yeah, and I think that is an interesting journey, and it is a difficult journey to some degree, just to be able to be really mindful and sit in the middle of that, and not allow ego to drag you one way and not allow, spiritual ego to drag you another way, or that, I just have to have nothing and just give it all away. And it's like, well, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Both sides are not beneficial,
No,
and I think that's the same with most things in life.
Yeah.
If you take an extreme view one way or the other, it's not helpful.
No.
It's just not helpful.
Yeah. Got to sit in the middle, right?
Yeah.
You know how to be in the middle. And it's not being a fence sitter. It's
No.
the symbol up here, the Vesica piscis. You got to sit in
That's
the
it.
eye.
Yeah,
That's how
absolutely.
you see, right?
That's where you see everything, when you sit in that space. I mean, it's a great symbol,
Yeah.
and this is where sacred geometry is so beautiful and poetic, because it tells us everything. It
Yeah.
gives us direction. It shows us what and how we should be, doing this life. And that image especially is a really good insight, because when you sit in the middle, you have the eye,
Yeah.
right? You can see everything.
That's
When you're
right.
on one side or the other, you can only see one perspective. And that
100%.
could be right, or it could be wrong, or it could be the best perspective, but you're not going to know unless you sit in the middle and go, okay, I get the two perspectives, and let's come together with that.
100%. And look, this is really important, listeners, is that both of us have been in corporate. Both of us have been on the extension of woo-woo, right?
Yes.
And have
Totally.
experienced the extremes of both. And
Yeah.
they're not fun to be in the extremes of both.
No, they're not.
And
They're not.
but you don't know until you
No.
have what's called a meltdown.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember melting down in the corporate, and then I remembered melting down in the spiritual. I was like, oh, I'm taking myself so far away
Yeah.
from myself. I remember, I shouldn't be connected to sex. I should be be doing this. I started listening to these fundamental rules of what you should and shouldn't do, and I was just like, oh God, I'm being a dickhead over here now.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've both had that journey, that's kind of the interesting part. We've both been on that journey and had to come back and try and, and to find that center point.
Yeah, 100%. So Marcus, where are you now? Like, what are your plans now? Because you're one of these people, when you decide to press a button, everyone comes running, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We just spoke about this, you're having your massive meltdown. I'm glad it wasn't 2.5 years. You managed to get the right help, and you're back on track again. So where's Marcus pressing the button now?
Yeah. So I am. So I started a Facebook group, Heart of the Matrix, to start talking about the dimensional aspects and some of the stuff that I'd learned. People started asking me to teach the medicine again, the information again. And I think from my recent experience where we met, is again to get back into flow, to become really stable in space and time, to be really centered, and to follow the energy. And right now the energy is taking me into sharing the medicine again. And I've just run one group through, just running another group through, and just really sharing that deeper wisdom. And in my Facebook group, we do a lot, meditations and sacred circle work, and, some of the mystery school stuff, bringing that sort of information back, because what I realized the sort of direction is to get 1% of the planet into a cosmic conscious state is really a key, and get them sort of fully connected with a universe teeming with life. And when that consciousness starts to appear, it's much easier to get into a center point, because you realize that everything that's happening here is just a small part of everything that's happening, and that we shouldn't get too caught up in either side, but really sit there in the middle and see the truth of what's going on, the ultimate truth. That's going to help you to step into your truth and live that on the planet. And if we could have a planet of everybody living in their full truth, then we'd be, heaven would be on earth.
Yeah. And I think this is really, really important, because look, so many people will like backlash, spirituality and look at it. It's like a taboo subject at the moment. It's really difficult because you get way too weird.
Yeah.
And it sounds too weird for the normal person.
Yeah.
And then you get the normal person, who want a taste of it.
Yeah.
But I think we need to be really understanding that We've got to be good to people. We're here. We're physical. We've got to do those normal things. Pat your dog. Be nice to your neighbour, and don't yell at the parking inspector.
Yeah.
No?
It's what I like to term practical spirituality.
Yeah.
You know, we're not extremes of anything. We're just us, fully us.
Yeah.
And I don't think we are extremes. You know, when we're fully centered and sitting in the flow state, I don't think we are extremes per se.
Yeah, and I think this is really important, listeners, because I know Marcus has got a really important part to play on this planet, which is to help people gain stability in who they are,
Totally.
and what they're about. And I know from hearing some of the things that people get up to in the spiritual realm, there's a lot of instability there. And when you've been in a corporate sense, and you know what it's like being in that world, you know what it's like being on the other side of it, you have a much rounder perspective of how to play in this space.
Yes, definitely.
Right? Because I know when I ended up, my first experience wasn't much fun. I was in the psych ward, pretty quickly after having some people who were not very helpful, taking me on a journey of pulling me apart, kicking me about, and not knowing where my left and right is. And this is what people can do. It's like the spirituality can border on crazy.
Yeah, it can.
It can. And you have to be really, really stable to be able to handle information that comes in this space. And it's not as easy as you think. I was walking, I was getting blinds the other day, and my other part of me opened up, and I was hearing two voices coming out of the lady.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, a little bit too far, Jason. Pull that back. Because I was like, hang on, I don't need two voices. What's her actual voice? And there was another voice popping through her mouth every now and then. I'm like, okay, is that real? What's going on? And a lot of people, we just had a lady who's joined our academy who was hearing voices, and she hears none now.
Yeah.
We got her back to her original voice, and she had 12 years of seeing psychologists.
Yeah.
And no help. 6 weeks with us. Gone back to normal. So then we can open the gifts up without actually creating the problem of psychology and getting lost in what this is all about.
Yeah. And absolutely. And as we sort of are shifting and moving from a consciousness point of view, more and more of these things are sort of appearing, as we move through dimensional shifts, more of this sort of stuff tends to, be showing up. And again, it's the stability of, staying into who you really are, rather than sort of transitioning through lots of different dimensions of voices and things like that, because you can't share your gifts when you're dealing with that sort of stuff.
No, and that's really important. Like, you love, skiing and doing
totally.
and hanging out with your kids and having just conversations about dinner and that sort of thing is also really, really relevant and really, really important. Just having normal day-to-day conversations around life that we lead.
Yeah, it is important. And then being able to integrate all that's, really, really important. And I think either extreme often shows itself as an ego sort of version, You can go ego with spirituality just as you can go ego with, the other stuff that, corporate or whatever realm. You can easily get caught into that. And I think that's what happens sometimes, people get caught up in it. And, I think, I probably did the same when I left corporate. When you're extreme one way, you tend to go extreme the next, and then you have to find that center point, right? Eventually, so that you can stabilize yourself and then be able to share your gifts, what you're really here to share.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I'd love listeners, would you have a tip of what do you do with the ego? Like, how do you know? Like, a lot of the time, I've seen a lot of people with their head up their ass, not knowing that they've got it up their ass because they've gone too far. Like, what sort of advice can you give someone who is going on this journey, whether it's corporate and you're listening from a corporate perspective, or whether you're listening from a spiritual perspective, whatever perspective you're in? How do you tame it?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. I think there's a couple of things. I have a saying that says you can't change something you can't see. So being aware of it is really important for the difference between the ego and the spirit, or the soul aspect of you. And being connected with that's really important. And so if you can't or haven't been connected to it, that's when someone like Jace is really helpful to help you sort of feel into that and get a visceral understanding of it. For me, I tap into my sort of gut brain, my gut, and let that lead. Our world's flipped upside down. We're told that this is the most important thing, and the leader and the controller. Then there's your heart, maybe, if you want to go into feelings, but that's dangerous. So try not to do that too much.
Yeah.
But then the gut, where our intuition and when we can really get into flow with the universe, we're told doesn't exist and is stupid. Don't go anywhere near it. For me, it's about flipping that the other way around, right? Use this as a great tool for creation, for sure, but don't let it lead because it's going to take you down some, maybe some roads that you don't want to go down. So just tapping into that gut. So using meditation to sort of tap into that, to listen for the energetic flow and to follow that energy as best you can. And that takes some work to be able to do that. I think, for me, again, it's a bit of a feeling. When I feel my energy rising up into my head, I know that I'm probably being drawn into the ego a bit. When I start making decisions too quickly, it's another indicator for me.
Yeah.
And so I've learned now to go, I'm not making too quick a decision. I'm going to feel into it first. And when someone asks me for a quick decision, I go, look, I've just got to feel into this. Yeah. And I'll get back to you. Because in the past, I've done these quick decisions, and often that's an ego decision, because the ego is like, yeah, that's great. Yeah, let's grab that. And off we go. And so I've learned that that's often a mistake for me. And I think, to some degree, it's sort of making friends with the ego. Like the ego is not this horrible, rotten thing, and we've got to just get rid of it and never have it. It's there for a reason, right? And it is helpful from time to time. So I think making friends with it's really important. When we hate something or want to push something away, we tend to give it more energy. So it tends to come back sneakier than before. And before we know it, we're in the ego and we do, oh my God, how did that happen? So there's no point fighting it or beating it up. It's about becoming friends with it in a way, having a healthy relationship with it to go, okay, we'll use you when we need to, type of thing. And in the meantime, I love your opinion, ego. Thanks so much. But right now, I'm just going to follow this and we'll see what happens, right? Let's go on an adventure together. And so I'm continually taking it with me, not necessarily trying to squash it or push it away or get rid of it, because then it's just going to come and smack me in the back of the head. And, before I know it, it'll do something sneaky.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is really important, listeners, is that the reverse of how we should be thinking. And that's where we get the energy. Your belly button actually has the most neural pathways in it. So when you get an input through your belly button, you end up getting your gut brain working. It starts to activate. It does take time. It takes time to be thinking another way, to having the information flow in a very, very different way. And as Marcus said, there's the energy. Then you get to your heart, it travels up to your heart to feel, so you feel it, and then it gets to your brain. And because we're not taught this, we go straight to brain from school. So it's how to re-educate this. And I think this is what Marcus is here to do, is help re-educate the way in which our human design is meant to function. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How do we get in flow with the natural rhythm of the universe and ourselves? And the natural rhythm is gut, heart, head, not head, heart, gut, which is what we're taught. Well, sort of thrown into. We're not even taught it. We're sort of forced into it. It's not a teaching. It's a doctrine almost, right? The brain is the master. And it's like, no, that's not the case, and we don't want it to be the master because of its limitations. It's great for certain things. It's an amazing organ, but it's really poor at making decisions. Like, it's incredibly poor at making decisions. It'll give you a good assessment. It'll tell you, hey, this one or that one, 20%, 70%, that's our opinion. It'll give you great opinions, but it won't give you a definitive, that's where I need to be, or that's what it should be, or that's right, that's wrong. It just won't give you that. And that's where we start to trip up. And this is where the ego can then take over, because then the ego comes in and says, well, I just know. it's definitely that. We definitely have to do that. And it's like, okay. And then it'll justify all the million practical ways why that's the thing to do. And all the while your gut might be going, no, no, but the gut's so beautiful. It's so gentle, right? And this is another way to see the ego. The ego yells and screams and drags your attention, whereas the gut doesn't. It's really quiet and soft. And it's like this beautiful mother that just wants to hold you and nurture you. But the ego comes in and goes, no, don't do that. She's silly. No, we've got to go and do this. Because it makes logical sense, right, to do that. Often the gut response, that beautiful response, doesn't make logical sense. And the brain often will go, you're silly. Why would you want to work with Jason? That's ridiculous. You should go and see this, that thing or that thing. You should just join a business development program, a really hard, full on, because that's where you should be.
Yeah. It's interesting, especially when it is business, like when people go and say, okay, I want to go and get some help with some business, and then it falls apart, because if a lot of people can just follow the A, B, C, D, and E, and they're good at it.
They can.
A lot of people can't. And
exactly.
And this is the reason why 90% of businesses actually fail, because you actually have to have a bit of what we do to actually get yourself ready to be able to do the 1 through 2, 3, 4, and 5. So
I think they end up doing the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and go against their gut. So they're doing it and they're feeling, oh, this doesn't feel right. But the guru I'm following told me to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right?
That's right.
They're not aligning and stabilizing to the energy that they're feeling. When 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 could be the right thing to do, but do it in a way that's in flow with you. Right. We do have to do certain things to attract clients and make money. And there is a sort of process around that. But if you don't do it within flow, then you end up causing resistance and then it doesn't work. And this is the issue you're talking about, is everybody follows the numbers. And for some, it works because it's sort of more in flow with them and they're really good at that. Most people aren't. And so they go against their own natural sort of state of being. And of course, resistance builds up. And of course, no clients come and no money's made.
That's
and then they turn around and blame the system. Oh, well, the system doesn't work. And it's like, well, no, that's not necessarily true. You just haven't learned how to integrate it into your flow, your rhythm. Right. And that's where some of our stuff helps, because, we have an ability to feel into that and go, okay, what's the rhythm? I can give anyone the steps. I've done that. I can give you step 1 to 10, no problem. That's the easy part. The other part is, how do I integrate into my own flow with that? And that maybe it's not step 3, it's actually step 3B, because I'm a B, right?
That's
I'm not just 3 like everybody else. I actually happen to be a B, or you could be 3F or 3Z or whatever it might be. And being able to integrate that way creates amazing success and abundance, and whatever word you want to use.
100%. And I think this is really important, listeners, because if you understand that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Marcus, I'm sure you've met this, and I've met this a lot, is that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people aren't happy.
No.
And so I used to work on people who used to live in this suburb called Red Hill. And most unhappy humans, right? And because they were focusing on their big house and the money and all of that, and the house was sold, so worked on the kids were devastated, and they were unhappy kids, right? And this is really important to integrate the two, and this is what we do. So Marcus, I am so grateful to have you on Uncovered. Thank you for jumping on and spending time with me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to have you on my podcast, and I'm so grateful that you got me out of my room. And I got you out of your funk a little while ago.
I love the poeticness of it, that we helped each other. This is this beautiful co-creative, collaborative environment we need to be supporting,
100%.
that at one point I led and helped you, and at one point you led and helped me, and we're still here talking together and creating some amazing stuff. Just the fact that we're here, even if it's not practical, oh, we're doing this project together and this program, no, just the fact that we're here together is a co-creative experience.
100%. So guys, if you like this podcast and you like this guy, I'm going to give you all the details of how to find Marcus in the show notes to connect in with him. He's absolutely a magical man. And the thing I want to explain, listeners, is that I I'm always looking for really good people on my podcast. I'm not looking for people who are dickheads. So, I'm always looking for really good humans.
So that must mean I'm not a dickhead.
Yeah,
God for that. I was wondering.
Yeah. So it's nice to have you here, and hopefully, people, if you like this podcast, please like and share it. Share it with your friends. Give people the opportunity to have, in my opinion, the right form of guru. I'm talking to right now, not the head up the arse guru, a person who actually really cares for humanity, really cares for this planet, and really cares for your growth and his self. So thank you, Marcus, for jumping on with me today.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your time, because time is so valuable. What we'd love you guys to do, if you like this podcast, if you could share it with your friends, and also our website address for the podcast is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Our website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We have a free Facebook group called Wellness Leadership Evolution, so search for that. I'd love it if you could add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't buy it, so add me as a friend. And if you want some help and you would really like some support from us in the Academy, jump in. We have a process. You can do a break-in call to connect in with us. We do small courses. We have lots of things that we share. So we'd love the opportunity to give you a chance to change your life and turn it into a free one. You are one transformation away from change. Come and catch up.